we all start our journey by going on this idea of becoming a chiro, becoming a PT, becoming a physician, just like having a one goal in mind, but it ends up being that we kind of all end up wearing like several hats. And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess for you, what would be your definition of what a chiropractor is?
Hmm. Oh man, that's a good question. I would say somebody who's like my belief and what I work with a lot of clients that I've worked with, it's like a physical medicine specialist. Like they specialize in working with the spine from a physical standpoint, or a neuromuscular standpoint. So I want them to be able to rehabilitate the spine. I want them to be able to adjust the spine. I want them to be able to use therapies that can enhance the functioning of the spine, and then be able to do some strengthening exercises around that. Very similar to what a PT would do. Um, I don't want them just popping backs. I think that there's more to that. There's some people within the chiropractic profession that feel like, that's all chiropractors should do is just adjust the spine. But I think there's more to that. And that's my belief in it. I want them to really function. And I also would incorporate with being a physical medicine specialist also. I still think that you can't fix an inflamed body or an inflamed joint without
Mhm.
addressing systemic inflammation. So it's where, functional medicine standpoint and coaching people on lifestyle and what they eat. It is impossible nowadays with what people's bodies are exposed to work on a segmental level that's inflamed, or work on an area of the body that's inflamed with it ignoring that this person has systemic inflammation running through all of their joints.
Mm.
It's doing them a disservice. And actually, that's probably the most frustrating thing, is that you have healthcare providers focusing on their unique specialty with ignoring how the whole entire system works. Like, why are you trying to fix? You're trying to fix this person's hip and joint and knees, perhaps, which is fine. But just realize that the person's 200 pounds overweight. Their diet is atrocious. Their gut biome is horrible. They have inflammation throughout their entire body that's going to leave them be exposed to getting diabetes and cardiovascular events. How, like, it's almost insulting that doctors specialize in just their one area, whether or not coaching people on a systemic overall health wellness. It is, it aggravated me, I guess, when I was in school and I got out, and now I don't know if it irritates me so much as I'm just like, it's almost like when I look at a lot of other doctors and healthcare professionals, I just feel like you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your patients to learn as much as you possibly can about the whole entire human body, and to coach them about what they need to stay well. And you know, I think it's doing patients a disservice when you just focus on the localized level.
You have to treat
Just pick your
you got
area.
to treat the whole patient. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
thinking if you scope in on one area, you're going to miss so much. And when you were working as a chiropractor, I mean, if you have somebody who comes in and they have all these issues, where did you start? Because it can be a daunting,
I,
you only have so much
what,
time in your first interview, right? And
yeah,
one thing that I've tried not to do is just focus on all the bad that's going on in the patient's life, because I feel like it's very
yeah.
easy to kind of like just jump on them, like, okay, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, and they're like, okay, well, thanks for the guilt, the guilt trip this morning, but I'm just trying to feel better.
The
Where did you?
dynamics of I've learned, I learned sales training and the dynamics of human behavior, and it's you have to take people where they're coming in from. So if they're coming in for a knee condition or coming in for a low back condition, what their primary motivation is, you got to start with that first.
Mm,
It's what's important to them right now. And then you can educate them on a systemic level and overall level, but you got to start with what's important to them first. And then make the commitment that over time, I'm going to educate this person on everything that they should be doing. But when it comes to getting somebody motivated to change their behavior, as human beings, we don't change and do something completely different unless we're motivated, and it's usually by pain. Especially from physical therapy standpoint and chiropractic standpoint, most patients come to us when they're in pain and they can no longer deal with it. So I take them from that level and start them from that, and then I usually let them experience the pain and discomfort because I know that's ultimately what's going to change their behavior. It's funny how, as physical therapists and chiropractors, we expect somebody to come in and do rehab 3 times a week in the beginning for like 30 minutes or 45 minutes sometimes, right? And so if I would work with somebody, I would typically work with a patient for 2 to 3 months, and then I would put them on some sort of maintenance program where they would come as needed. But in the beginning, I'm asking somebody to drive to my office 3 days a week and spend 30 to 45 minutes in my practice to rehabilitate or to work on their body, right? And the reality of that is most patients, the whole reason why they've gotten to this point is they've never done anything for 45 minutes 3 times a week. They've never
Mm.
gone to a gym 3 times a week for 45 minutes. They've never done any of that. And I'm going to ask this person to show up 3 times a week and change their behavior. I'm asking them to change what they're used to doing. And the only way that we can get that a human being usually will find the courage to change and do something different is when they're in discomfort or enough pain or fear. And so usually when I start working with somebody, I will purposely in my consult, and this is what I when we do sales training with practitioners, is we dive into that uncomfortable space that most patients don't want to talk about, and it's hard for doctors and staff members to usually do this. That's why it takes training to learn how to do it. But I know that there's so much benefit that comes out when I can get somebody to open up and really share about how they really feel about their condition and that uncomfortable space that they don't tell most practitioners and most doctors. But when we can go into that, that's usually where the most growth comes from. And that's the dynamics of human behavior. If I was coaching somebody on a business aspect, there's a whole motivation for behind why somebody wants to grow their practice and grow to the next level and expand in that, right? There's something that's usually driving them. And and it's not money, by the way. People think it's all surface level. Surface level, it's really easy for people to think, well, I want to grow this business and practice, or I want to scale because I want to make more money, right?
Hmm.
But there's something at the core that's driving them to that. And sometimes it's fear, or sometimes it's an aversion for other stuff. But you got to get to that level, both from a coaching standpoint, whether I'm coaching an entrepreneur or I'm coaching a practice owner or a patient to do something different. I got to get down to that core, what moves them. And if you can do that as a coach, or you can do that as a doctor, you can find out what that thing is. It helps them find the courage to do something different and change.
Yeah, and how long did it take you to kind of learn this stuff? I know because you said
You
like
know,
in Chiro school you didn't learn this. In PT
oh
school,
yeah.
we you kind of touch upon it where you have to be multidisciplinary. You have to treat the patient, and
Mhm.
they kind of do these broad brushstrokes so that way you can get an idea and at least maybe think about how to treat. But I guess how long did it take you to start really implementing or at least realizing, okay, this patient's probably coming to me for, they're driving 20 minutes every day to get here and then 40 minutes with me and then 20 minutes back. And so,
Yeah.
when
Took
did you
me
start realizing it?
almost like 8 or 9 years in practice before I really started to realize because I don't think in the beginning part of building a practice, you're so focused on logistics and all these other things that sometimes you lose sight of like what's really occurring in the dynamics of the psychology of when I first start working with a person. And so it almost took me, I was successful in those first 8 or 9 years, but I started working with sales trainers and communication coaches, people that really know how to communicate and create influence in how they communicated. And what it, and it took me 9 years of practice to realize that like it is the whole entire success in business is based on communication. It is, whether you're communicating to patients or customers, or you're communicating to your staff, or you're communicating to yourself, it's all your success is directly proportional to how well that you can communicate. So a lot of these things I never noticed early on, or I didn't have time to look at just because I didn't know.
Right.
Like you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So a lot of times it takes timing and the right coach to come into your life before you start to learn on these things. And had that coach come to me first year in practice, there's no way I would have been open to it, because in the first year of practice, I was just learning I was learning insurance billing and like all the logistic stuff, scheduling, all that. You know, early in business, we're such bad communicators because you come out of school and we think that it's one thing, and then you realize, like, man, I don't really know anything, or at least that feels that way. And that's part of the process, by the way. It's part of the process of like feeling uncomfortable and feeling like you don't know anything. Um, that leads to continued growth. It's like
Yeah.
you have to go through those periods of not feeling like you know enough and not having the confidence that motivates you to learn more and to become a better communicator, a better clinician. You mentioned it. I was thinking about it. It was like we all generalize in school, and then when we get out, we figure out what we really like. So we go and specialize, or we take continuing education. And then really the education process starts when you get out of school, because then you have to figure out, like, what do I really love about all this,
Mm.
and what do I want to specialize in? So you get more learning and more information about what you really want to specialize and focus on. And the same thing happened, and that could, from a clinical standpoint. From a business standpoint, you have to do the same thing. Like, you have to go in and you have to learn how to organize people, how to lead a team, how to build it out to and create the dream that you want to create. That takes training from management, from leadership, and marketing and sales, and all that stuff takes continuing education. So I, the the one current theme that if you want to say, like, in the 20 years you've been out of school, and I've done several different businesses, and I'm constantly in my business coaching mastermind. Most of these guys are all 7-figure practice owners, and they own multiple 7 figures practices. And the one current theme I've always seen is there's one, maybe two, but the one is this continue yearning to learn more.
Mm.
Like this, if there's one thing that I've seen among the most successful people that I've known, is there's an insatiable um, thirst for more learning and more growth. And so there's almost this humility. I mean, in the most successful people I've seen are usually the most humble, and the least successful people are usually the biggest a-holes, or they
Yeah.
have the biggest egos, right? You ever
Hmm.
found that? So you're like, I've met billionaires before, and people that have, extremely successful, and when you meet them, they're just so humble,
Yeah.
and they don't need to be, but they're just that way because I think they realize how much work goes into growing and
Mm.
to continue to be successful. The people that come off with the most ego and have short-term success. And short-term is like they may do one business and be successful, but like everything else they've tried fails, or they go through this period where, like, maybe for 6 months I might have success, or one year I have a good year, but they fail miserably in other areas. There's this point where they have really big egos and they just stop learning, and they're just like, I've gotten everything that I need. I'm at a good safe space, and I don't need to learn anymore. And that's like the biggest recipe for disaster. And it doesn't matter whether it's the business owner or the staff members. Anybody in an organization that feels like they know everything needs to be like, you need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
If you want to look for in your business any team members that may be a problem for you, it's the ones that have egos.
And how open were you to that idea? Because you had said early on, like when you first started the Chiro business, you were working on so much, figuring out insurance. How am I going to make money? How am I going to worry about this? And I think there's a common trend. They're almost like a parallel idea with how open you are for your patient to them be willing to do your exercise routine and stuff. And initially, sometimes they're not open, and sometimes they are. And so maybe for you, what were you open to that idea originally, to being like, okay, I'm not an expert. I'm just, every day is a new day. Like I have to be open to learning new things. Was that something hard for you to kind of adopt, or was it originally just a very natural
I
idea that
think
you're
it's
like, oh
something
yeah,
that
duh.
you grow. I do think that there's something innate about some of that, and then I also think there's a component of you almost have to go through a period where you don't do well, right?
Mhm.
Like you and none of us is perfect. So we're all going through this journey in business and in life together. And I think it all takes us a certain time frame to realize that, like, yeah, we need help. Like, I need help from other people. I need help from my staff. Like, I can't do anything on my own. And this is another thing that goes with humility, is like, you realize you need people and you need others to help you achieve the dreams that you want, and honestly, to achieve a good life, personal and professional. And when we're early on, I think sometimes there's just like the ego that we want to do it ourselves. And this is really like, if you want the perfect model of somebody who's small minded and who's always going to have a small practice. And there's doctors that are always that way. It's the ones that feel like they got to do it all by themselves, and they're
Mm.
like, oh, they always have to be the hero. They always have to be the winner, and they always have to be the one that has to come in and rescue the organization or the business. And all good ideas have to flow through me. You want to talk about somebody who's always going to be small, it's that type of person. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned is like, I need others to help me. I need coaches to work with. And I don't think I first started with this. This was probably like, I had a really good mentor. And I think the first couple of years in practice, I had a great mentor that would naturally feed me great information and take it upon himself to show me,
Mm.
and spend time with me and nurturing me, which I will always be grateful, and a soft spot in my heart for my first mentor. But it was after working with him that I realized, I was like, oh man, there's other coaches out there that can benefit me. And I'm glad I'm glad that I got over whatever ego that I had to realize that I needed this information. And I seen it in someone, we all see it in people that we go to school with. I saw it with a couple of people I went to school with that were utterly struggling and failing.
Mm.
And they were failing because they refused to ask for help. They had some weird thing where they thought that they were supposed to know it all and do it all. And they always had these egos like, well, I don't want to pay him this. I don't want to pay this coach this money, or I don't want to pay this consultant this money because I feel it's too much money. And like, you were looking at them, you're like, dude, you're driving, like, you can't even pay your bills. Like, you're not even
Mm.
paying yourself. Like, why are you continuing to struggle and try and do this on your own, versus us who just realize, like, we're not perfect, we need help, and we're going to ask for it, and we're going to pay for that advice.
It seems like a common theme is everyone does get to that point though, right? Everyone gets to that point of like they're running into an issue and they're trying to figure out like why are things not going my way? And do you think having a point in your life where you think you're hot shit basically is crucial for you to advance to that next portion, or do you think you're able to kind of skip over and get to that point of being like, oh, okay, like I need help, or I need, this is the point in my life where I need to get help from a coach or whatever?
I think failure is a really important lesson, in business. That's usually what I mean. I think, and this is also, I think, what keeps successful people humble, is because they've also had experienced failures. Like, if you've been in business long enough, like, it's funny. And I think this is answering your question, but this is what when you asked that question, this is what I was thinking about. Most of the successful people that have been in practice for a while have all experienced failures, like, an epic failure once or twice, and that also is what keeps us humble,
Mm.
because in those failures you realize that you're human, and that, it's always like you it's and so that when you have success, you realize that, like, yes, it was effort, but it wasn't your own effort. You needed help in that, and there's employees and team members that you needed help. And you also sometimes need a little bit of luck. You need a lot of hard work. You need purpose and passion for what you do. You need a little bit of luck on your side, or at least the gods to favor what you're doing. And by the way, when you're on purpose and when it's the right thing that you're passionate about, the universe tends to favor that
Mm.
somehow. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And when it's not something you're passionate about, when it's not something that you truly love, and you try to do it, the universe somehow just doesn't favor those projects or businesses, and they will usually not do well. But I've had a number of those where I make mistakes in business, and I realize that I'm human, and I realize that, like, I got to go back to that's why core values are so important and purpose is so important. And that's why it has to be written down, because you always go back to that. Like, what is my core purpose or my why behind what I do every day? And what's the core values that I operate that business by? And am I doing that currently right now with these things that I want to work on? And if I'm not, then I need to have the courage to say no to those things. You know, um, it takes getting over your fear of loss to let go of those things, and it also takes experience. Um, the first time you say no to a client, or the first time you say no to a project that could bring in revenue, but it just isn't passionate, it doesn't fit your passion. When you say no to those projects and then the universe creates another opportunity, like literally almost like the next day or the next week, the universe brings in something that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
you learn that it's okay to say no to these things, because something else is going to come up that's going to be something that inspires you.
What was the first time when you were running your chiropractic business where you had to say no, or perhaps you had to realize like this was a failure, like I need to do something different?
Oh, at the time I brought in weight loss services that I wasn't passionate. Like I brought in something I wasn't passionate about into the practice to help serve patients, but I wasn't really passionate about it. It wasn't
Mm.
like, and I always say it has to serve the patient, but you have to be passionate about it. Right. So I brought in like some sort of weight loss service that failed miserably, and just wasn't passionate about it, and it lasted like a month. And I see doctors do this all the time. Like, they bring in services that are not passionate about. Like, when we talk about functional medicine and health coaching, it's okay for you to, if you don't love that stuff, it's okay for you not to do it. You should refer out for that. You should
Mm.
tell, like, this is something that you need to seek out. Here's a pamphlet. Go talk to this person. I think that's what they should do. But you don't have to do it if you're not passionate. You should never do something that you're not passionate about, because it will traditionally always fail. Like 99% of the time, it's going to fail. So when you bring a product or a service, or you hire a team member that you're not super excited about, it ultimately won't go well.
Yeah, and I think for people who maybe are, a way to kind of gauge it maybe is creating resentment in your own mind. Like if you're going into work every day and you're doing this thing and you're almost like resenting that whole the idea
Mhm.
of doing that, perhaps it's like a gauge to be like, okay, maybe this is something that I care about. Because I think people have a heart, they don't have the self-awareness to even understand what they're passionate about. Like, even finding that idea is really, really tough. And so I think a good barometer maybe would be resentment. Is that something that you use as a way to be like, okay, maybe this isn't something
No,
for me?
to a certain degree. I use resentment. You can use resentment, not resentment, but like, when you're not into it.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So there's something called the 1,000-pound door test that I came up with, and this is whenever I sold a business. This is when I knew it was time to sell any business or stop doing what I was doing. When the door to open up your practice or your business weighs 1,000 pounds and you don't want to walk in, you're just
Mm.
like, this door is heavy as hell. It is time for me personally to think and consider about exiting that business or doing something else. When
Okay.
and that's like that feeling of you're not excited when you wake up in the morning. I think the greatest thing for any business owner or human being is the feeling of being excited about waking up in the morning and supercharged about what you do.
Mm.
And I feel like you are robbing yourself of what life could be if you're doing anything that you're not super passionate about. I
Yeah.
understand, like, people have to sometimes chase, an income, and they have to sometimes do that. But like, I feel like God has me here for a reason, and I think He wants me to be happy about with what I'm doing in my life. And there's no better feeling than waking up and being passionate about what you do. And I have gone through periods where I've woken up in the morning and I've not been excited about what I do. And usually that's an indication that I need to think about doing something else. And
Mm.
I've given myself that freedom to either stop doing that or sell the business. And I've sold two businesses because of both of those things, where I just was like, I'm not passionate about it anymore. And I've given myself that freedom to do that. Um, I've had two great financial windfalls from both of those sales, that also has given me more freedom to make that decision. But I know my faith in the universe, or whatever you want to call it, or God. I just know that the universe has always brought me the next thing that I am passionate about.
Mm.
I have like 10-year cycles on stuff. It's 8 to 10 years for me. I'll do something for 8 to 10 years, and then it's time for me to go into something else and change either professions or change what I'm doing. Because as long as I'm here, I want to be excited to be here, and when I'm no longer excited to be here, I need to get the hell out. My
Yeah,
ticket
for sure.
needs to be cashed. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So,
How'd you get people how'd you build a team around that idea? Because you can, you yourself, you have everything, figured out. You know where you need to go.
mhm,
You have this experience, and you know who you are and where you want to go and what you want to do. Now, hiring people is going to be completely different, where
yeah,
some people aren't going to share that same idea, and some people are just there for a job, and that's okay. But I guess, how did you build a team around that idea of being like, okay, we're here for a purpose. This is for the clinic, or this is for the
it's
business, and how do you build around that?
it's the only way I run a team, by the way. I there are business owners and people out there and leaders that are okay with accepting people that just want a paycheck.
Hmm.
Um, and I have, like, in periods of time, I would say everything, whether I was growing the team for my private practice, and we had 7 team members before I sold it, or my agency where I had 27 team members. It all goes down to purpose and core values. You only bring on people that have a passion and are purpose driven. Like, they want to learn more. Like, what you realize when you're growing an organization is you attract exactly who you are. So if you're passionate about growing and learning more and serving others, then you attract the same thing in your life. The same people will come on. It took me 15 years in business to realize this, because I learned this from another coach. Um, and it's like, your organization is a dynamic energy, and usually everybody in that organization has shared values. That's the reason why you all love working together. And when somebody comes on a team that doesn't have that same core value, they stick out almost like a sore thumb. So whether it was my practice or whether it was my agency, we always ran on our purpose and our core values. And if you didn't fit that, if you weren't motivated by learning like learning more, becoming better, figuring out how you can run operations better, faster, and and more profitable, if you weren't interested in serving others and helping clients, run successful practices and serve more patients, if that didn't get you up in the morning and get you excited, you stuck out like a sore thumb, because everybody else was there for that purpose. And if you weren't, both in practice and in the agency, they stuck out like a sore thumb, and there was time to always let them go. And so, you know, we weren't one of those people. Both, with the practice, I had people that they were there for 5 or 6 years. But with my agency, because we were growing so fast, but we were always fine tuning who was on board. We had a couple people there for 2 or 3 years, but we replenished staff because we were always looking for the cream of the crop. We were always looking for the best. Those 27 team members, they were the cream of the crop. I mean, they were the best of the best, before we left, before I sold that agency, because we started with like 40 or 45 people, and we cut down to that. And
Mm.
we were, and it's your job as a CEO and president, as you're running this organization, to make sure that you inspire people with purpose and passion and core values. You want to talk about what will grow and expand an organization bigger than you ever thought and bigger than you ever dreamed? It's your purpose and your core values. If your purpose is bigger than you, if you have a purpose where you're just going to go, and I just want to make, I want to grow, like the reason why both the practice grew so well and the agency grew so well was because the purpose was inspiring that to them.
Mm.
And so it was bigger than just one person. If the purpose has to be bigger than the CEO. It has to be bigger than the president. It has to be bigger than the manager. It has to be bigger than your rehab tech. It's got to be bigger than any one person, so that more and more people can come on and grow with that purpose. And the greatest rush in life, the greatest, for me personally, and everybody's going to be different on this, but for me personally, the greatest thrill and And feeling in life is, creating that purpose and intention, creating the core values, getting people to come on to that, and leading them to believe that this is what we're going to be able to do. And you start to expand on that stuff and see it grow and how big it can be. There's no better rush in the entire universe, because then you feel like you're doing what you were put here to do.
Mm.
And when you look at that, I'm 48, so I'm like, I feel like I've done the things that I've wanted to do up until this point. If I was, if I was going to pass away and tomorrow, I can clearly say with a clear conscience that I did exactly what I was supposed to do while I was here. And I
Mm.
influenced everybody's life that I was in, whether it was from the agency, the people that came on and worked with me. It's like people ask me a question like, how are somebody asked me yesterday, do I know anybody who is from my old agency that might be looking for a job? And I was like, no, because once they left that agency, they're all strong players. Like all of them are doing extremely well
Mm.
in the companies that they're working for. And I don't think that's because of me. I think that's because I attracted those people that were hungry and wanted to be winners, and they wanted to grow as people. And so they're great people for other organizations, and they're not gonna, I literally was like, I don't know anybody in my old agency that when I left it doesn't have a job right now, that is not thriving in the company that they're in. And actually a few of those people are actually running their own agencies right now.
Yeah. And I think that's a testament to early on setting those core values, setting the right purpose. And I think people can get confused on what purpose is and how to set it. And so for you, I want to ask you because I can imagine somebody's purpose like early on, like when you were first starting your chiropractic business, would be like, okay, I want to make six
Yeah.
figures in the next
Yeah.
5 years, or I want to have 10 businesses and all over the country. How do you define a purpose, or like how do you start cultivating what your
So
purpose
first
should
of
be?
all, I don't think it's good to have a purpose that's financially,
Okay.
you can have a goal to make certain finances. And I think you need to, as the CEO and president, you need to have goals for you to reach. But purpose is different than a goal. Purpose and your core values are way different than a goal.
Mm.
So I would start every year and say, this is ideally what we want to do each quarter. Here's ideally what we would like to achieve financially and size wise of the company and size wise of clients. So I'd have an idea, and then I would always look at that every quarter to see how we're trending towards that. That's different than purpose. Purpose is, it can't be financially motivated, because once it's financially motivated, no one signs up.
Mm.
You know, people want to be paid well, but people will leave jobs. I've done it. My wife has done it. Team member, I know people that will do that, where they're like, yes, I'm getting paid a crap ton of money, but I'm not inspired by what I'm doing. There's nothing that's pulling me into this organization. I'm just kind of going through the motions. That will always lead to a lot of turnover. And so when I see people that have a lot of turnover, I always look at, well, what's your purpose? And when you go into a practice or you go into a business, when you ask three team members what the purpose of this business is and they can't tell you the same answer, it's never shared. No one ever talks about it.
Mm.
Purpose has to be about, it always starts in the service-based business with providing an exceptional service to the patients or clients that we're working with. So with the agency, it was like, we want to provide exceptional marketing service to make all of the clients that we work with, to make their lives easier so that they can serve more patients and they can help more patients. So we always looked at it as, we're helping these doctors provide services and change the lives of patients that are coming into the business. That's way bigger than like, we're here just to help market a practice.
Right.
We're here to just, you know, capture leads.
Here to do a
That's
job.
what most marketing companies were like. We're just here to help provide leads for a business. And I just, that doesn't inspire anybody and doesn't bring on the right people into your organization. So, for a private practice, it's always about like, we want to help serve patients at the highest possibility with, if it's PT or chiro, non-pharmaceuticals and non-surgical means. So we're always going to deliver the most exceptional. I feel like anything other than the highest quality of service, like if you want to build a purpose and then you have the right team members, it's got to be, we want to continue to grow and offer the highest level of service possible,
Mm.
with the highest level of service possible with the most advanced treatments, shortest amount of time, so that we can help free these patients from the pain they're experiencing and help change their lives for them and their families.
Mm.
Because it just doesn't influence the patient, it influences their families as well. That's a powerful purpose. You share that purpose every week. You know, when I was in practice, we read our purpose and core values every single week at the start of every main meeting. You know, and it was funny when I sold my practice. The guy who I'm still friends with the guy who bought my practice, and we're good friends. But his, like, at the time, his purpose wasn't really there. It was always about insurance billing and what he'd get paid. And one of my associates was like, he said to me, pulled me after the new team came on board, and he's like, you know, I always like I was getting tired. I got tired of us every single week going through our purpose and our core values. But once it was gone, I realized how much I missed it.
Mm.
And so, and one of the reasons, you know, when you remove the entrepreneur and when you remove purpose, anytime that you remove purpose from an organization that had purpose, there is a noticeable shift and change in the business. And sometimes people wonder, like, well, what changed in my business? Why is it no longer doing good? It's like, you forgot what your purpose was, and you forgot to tell them. You forgot to tell your team what the purpose was. So when I was with the agency, we shared that once a quarter. So we did quarterly leadership meetings, and we would have the whole entire team fly in from around the country, and we would meet for an entire day. And I think, like, you definitely, one of the key management tools is having your quarterly strategy meetings with at least your management team, or your whole entire team in each division. And so we always reiterated our purpose and our core values every single quarterly meeting, man. We went over that. And so I never wanted a team member on the agency side to not know what our purpose was. We printed it up, by the way, on the wall. So it was on the wall. Here's our core values, and here's our purpose. You guys have any questions? Read this. It's on the walls. And then I would literally pull it off, and I would start with every single quarterly meeting. Let's talk about why we're here. I want
Mm.
you, every single one of you need team members to know why we're doing what we do. And like, so if you lay that foundation, provide a great environment for them to learn and expand on what they know, plus provide that purpose, and then make sure that they're given the right, you know, they feel that they're making a good salary. It doesn't, like, we had revenue, you know, we had to make sure that we, you know, generated revenue and paid everybody's salary, and that there was profitable. But if you can do that, like, people won't leave if they feel a sense of purpose, and they feel that they're valued there, and that they're making enough money. Money's the last thing. It's like, am I passionate about, like, here's an employee's criteria. Am I passionate about what I do? Am I appreciated here? And then, am I making enough revenue? Am I making enough money? Right?
Mm.
Am I paying my bills? You create all three of those, you'll have somebody that never leaves you. You know?
Interesting. And talking about building teams with purpose, you made it a very you made it a point to make sure that everyone was on the same page. How did you let your patients know what your guys' purpose was, or
Yeah.
was it
Yeah.
driven by your guys' example of how you led the clinic?
We wouldn't tell them. We had it posted on the wall so they can read it anytime they wanted to.
Hmm.
And I would say, like, if you're a practice owner, you should post your purpose either on your website, or it should be posted on the office wall so they can read it. I don't need to go over that with patients. Patients know when they walk into a purpose-driven practice. Period. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you walk into a business that's on purpose, because the feeling that you get, it doesn't matter whether it's a healthcare office or just any other business. When you have a team that's on fire, and a team that's on purpose, and the business owner is on purpose, and they're there, there's a feeling that you walk in, and it's like, wow, this is different. And you know it because of how they communicate to you, right? They talk to you different. They provide a different service. They're more like hands-on, right? The practices or businesses that are off purpose and don't really care, there's also a feeling there. And it's a feeling like no one cares. They're
Mm.
going through the motions. There's all challenges with scheduling. There's challenges with the providing the service. There's just a feeling you get, like, they're off, man. They're either they're either they're either off purpose, or they just don't care. Um, or just, yeah, that I would say that's the biggest problem. Is sometimes you can have purpose, but you can have poor training, you know? But usually that will make up, the purpose will make up for it, because you'll seek out better ways of doing things, and you'll seek out more training if the purpose and intention is there.
And for your purpose, you know, you were trying to drive this originally after chiropractor school, you tried to drive this chiropractic business up. You were doing it for several years. At what point did you get to a point where you're like, my purpose is no longer, I want to do this chiropractor business. I want to do something else.
About a year and a half, a year after, I mean, the year before I sold it. So I was about 9 or 10 years in, and I was, I, at about 7 years in the practice, I was just looking for something different, you know, because I just was tired. Like I also, me personally, like the challenge of climbing a new mountain, and maybe that's, you know, maybe that's just me personally. I like to have a new challenge. I like to have something that I'm working towards, right? And when I knew how to do this business after 5 years, maybe 7 years, it was like, this is how this is. It was very systematic, you know. And I was driving a successful practice, and I kind of got tired of doing the same thing over and over again, and I
Mm.
wanted a new challenge. And that's, I realize now at 48, 20 years in the business, and almost 50 years of being on this planet, I just learned that, like, me personally, I like new challenges, and I am not okay with doing the same thing over and over for 30 years. My in-laws were dentists for 35 years before they retired. And they were, you know, the last 6 or 7 of those years, they were only working 2.5 days a week. So they weren't really working that much, but they were okay doing that. That's a different, maybe it's a different generation, but me personally, and this is why I think God, I know God's watching it out for me, because he always gives me the next thing, you know. And so when I just was getting tired of practice, I was looking for different things, and that's how I found online marketing. I just got really good at online marketing, and you know, the door was getting heavier and heavier to open every day. You know, I'd walk into the practice, and I'm just like, you know, I've done this already. You know, there's no more new challenges for me with this. Like I kind of understood it. Like,
Doing Groundhog
yeah,
Day all over again.
kind of, you know. And some, you know, some people are okay with that. Like I love my in-laws, and I love them for who they are, and they were okay with that. But that wasn't my path or journey, and so I wanted a new challenge, and I started doing digital marketing. I tried a coaching business for personal trainers that failed miserably. I tried doing that for 6 months, and I invested, like, I worked so hard on that, and I failed miserably at it. But through that process, I learned website design, I learned Google AdWords, and I learned how to do more digital marketing than I had before. That knowledge from that failed business is what started my agency.
Okay.
And so, towards like a year before I sold the practice, I went through a big challenge, and you know, made a couple big errors going to Argentina for 5 weeks. So, and I can tell that story in a minute, but I what came out of that was a couple people had asked, a couple, like 4 or 5 guys that I knew had asked me to do marketing for them. And I remember I was not making, you know, I was doing digital marketing. I was doing SEO marketing one day a week on Fridays. And I was working at a coffee shop in jeans and a t-shirt, man, you know, and it was only like for 4 or 5 hours, maybe a little bit on Saturday or Sunday. But, you know, I didn't have any kids at the time. I wasn't married. I was single. And I was like, or I was in a relationship with my wife. I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, you know, I'm working one day a week. I'm making $4,000 a month from these guys paying me for SEO. And yeah, it's not anywhere near what I was making for my practice. But I'm like, I'm only working half a day a week, and
Right.
it's generating this. So, and what I remember was, is I wasn't willing to give up doing the SEO to run the practice. And towards that last year when we were going through a lot of struggles, I was like, man, I'm just not, I know that I should be pulling back into the practice to really get this going up more and more, but I'm just like, I just don't want to. Like, I want to do this over here, and I wasn't willing to give this up over here. And that's when, you know, it was like, I got to sell this practice because I want to do this and I want to see where this can go. And I'm not willing to give it up for the practice. So at that point I was like, I'm going to, put the practice on the market and sell it and see what happens with this over here. So,
And do you feel like you built your 1,000-pound door with the chiropractic business?
did I build it? Did like there's, I know now knowing there's ways that I could have probably kept it going and done both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it would have required me to remodel how that practice operated. Like I would
Okay.
have had to make some shifts and changes. And um, I was too tired and exhausted at that time to do it. Or I was too burnt out at that time. I was like, if I had to move, I would have to it would probably take me 6 months to a year to restructure how the operations went to
Mm,
keep that business, to do something I didn't want to do anymore,
gotcha.
to then be freed up to build this. And by the way, when I went over here, this is how the universe this is how you made the right decision, because the universe just starts like sends it to you, right? We grew this thing from 4 clients to 30 clients to $1 million business in 12 months. It was generating over 7 figures. And my best year at the practice was 700,000. So
Mm.
in 12 months doing this digital marketing, we were able to expand that. And ultimately I grew that into a $3 million digital agency with 27 team members,
And that was the thing that you like doing, which
and I
is,
enjoyed doing it,
yeah.
you know, I enjoyed
And
doing it. So
how did you take your core values from the chiropractor business into the business that you do now? Because,
very similar. It was all
yeah,
service. I've been in
yeah.
service industry. I looked at this at one point. I was like, I was like, well, I took what we were doing with patients and I just applied it to doctors and then said, my job is to make sure their lives are easier. And I help facilitate that by providing them a constant flow of new patients coming into their practice that are qualified and motivated and ready to start care.
Yep.
That's my job. So at the end of the day, like I always look, I literally, to my detriment, I always focused on those clients more so sometimes than my staff. And I still made sure my staff was happy, but almost to a detriment. I was always in the corner of making sure that we serve those clients, man. I never had a negative review in the 8 years that we were there. I never had a bad review from clients. Because I always sympathized with where they were as a practice owner. Like I was a practice owner. I knew what it was like to leave on a Friday, not like being worried about what was going to happen on Monday, maybe not having enough new patients scheduled for the next week and maybe revenue is down, and then leaving work on Friday to try to spend time with your family, but you're so stressed out, you take all that emotions into your entire weekend and you're not really even there.
Right.
I knew what that felt like. And if I can help relieve some of that stress by making sure that they have a constant stream of new patients coming in, that is my job. That is what the job of the agency is, and it's to serve. And I just have always found, like, when you're focused on giving and serving more than receiving, you receive way more. Like you end up getting more back than you gave, right? It's like it's some dynamic law of the universe. I don't know what it is. I just know that, like, when I focus on others and I focus on serving people, I always get financial rewards back. All 100% of the time.
Mm.
Not like 1 out of 10 times, not 2 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times. When I focus on serving and giving, I always receive something back far greater. And that's where I feel like, it's all about serving others.
And how did you cultivate that with taking on clients? Because it seemed, you had built your business, you knew what you were doing. When you had
Mhm.
clients coming to you with all these problems that you've gone through already, how did you be like, well, I'm not sure this is going to be a good fit?
Yeah, so in the beginning we always qualified people. We knew exactly what a bad business owner was, and we knew what a good business owner was. And so we had pre-qualifying questions, right? You had to be a certain size and have a certain number of team. And then one of the questions we would always ask clients is, do you do weekly meetings? And one of the reasons why that's such a big question, you think that it's a basic, like every team has a weekly team meeting. No, they don't.
Hmm.
um, every team does regular. Do you do consistent role playing or training? Do you train on procedures and things that your systems and procedures in your office? Do you train on those? No. So you don't have weekly team meetings. You don't train regularly on things that you do in your, like, does the front office train on how to answer the phone? Do you train on insurance billing? Do you do role playing on treatments and therapies that you offer? If you don't care enough, if the business owner doesn't care enough to have a weekly team meeting with their team and train on a regular basis, that they can be the best, so they can deliver the service at the optimal level. If you don't care enough about that, dude, you're going to be the worst client for me,
Hmm.
because I know you're not going to give rat's ass about doing what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to tell you to do things a certain way. You are not going to take any advice, and
Yeah.
your team doesn't have any coordination. If you, how do you organize a group of people without talking to them every week and giving them a plan of action and telling them, like, hey, this is what we're going to train together? How do you bring a group? I don't know. I still don't know to this day
Telepathically, of
how
course.
how a leadership team can lead anybody without a regular meeting with your people, but that's the biggest indication that the doctor doesn't care, or he just doesn't know.
Yeah.
And it would be a cluster for us to work with them. So we would pre-qualify them if they answer no to those questions. And usually, by the way, you know, the successful businesses will do this. Unsuccessful offices will do this, and that's like, they won't meet every week. They won't role play and train. Everything's kind of chaotic. And I know the delivery of I already know, without walking into that, without stepping foot in that business, that the delivery of those services, because you don't train, are all over the place. So you can't provide a consistent product and consistent deliverability. If you can't do that for your patients, if you don't care enough to train just for your patients, dude, you're not going to fit my ethics. You
Right.
don't fit my team. And if you don't fit how we operate, because we do these things, then we're not going to be a good fit to work together. So we would try to pre-qualify them before we start working with them. And then if anybody snuck by, it was clearly evident within the first 30 days of setting up a client if they were not good, and we would just let them go. We would just let them out of the contract, refund their money, and let them go. Because every single one of those clients, or if you bring on a patient that you know shouldn't be there, you should just let them go, refund their money. And the same thing with for practice. If somebody wasn't, I refunded money all the time if we just didn't feel like it was a good fit, or I accepted a patient that I didn't feel was like, just didn't fit the practice. And they usually qualify themselves out of the practice, but I did it in practice, and I also did it in with the agency too. There's
It's pretty.
like, it's very similar with service-based businesses. It doesn't matter whether it's an agency, law firm, private practice, healthcare, dental office. It's very similar when you're in the service industry about who you should accept, who's going to be a great client or fit for you, and then how you should operate your team and deliverables.
Yeah, you're building a giant filter, and early on, I can imagine it's got to be more difficult to be like, oh, I'm just going to give their money back, because the first thing you're focused on, like you
Oh
said, even in
yeah,
your chiropractic business, was like, I'm focusing on revenue. I'm focusing on making more
yeah,
money. I'm focused
yeah.
on building all those things. And I think that's great. That, I mean, that whole idea of just like, here, just take your money back. Like, I don't even. This isn't important to me.
You
My important thing is serving my purpose, and the purpose is getting you better. And if you're not about it, then here's your money back, because I don't need it.
you do that once or twice, and you'll see the universe will provide you more. So there's like, so you say no and you refund, and then you get two patients over here that are like incredible patients, or two clients. Like, we would refund the client, and then we would get three more coming in the door to work with us that were ideal. So you do it once, or twice, and then you start realizing that this is something I should do whenever I don't feel confident about that person. And you'll pay the price when you hold on to those clients longer, or you hold on to those patients longer that don't want to be there or not a good fit. The price is, there's usually a bigger problem down the road, and it's either going to be with your team, or it's going to be with the client. And when your team, you ask like what leadership is too, is your team sees you stick to your core values, because it's so freaking rare. It's rare that a business will stick to their core values, and it's rare that they'll turn down work because of those core values. And when they see that you're willing to do that, dude, that's the biggest leadership. It's not money. It's them saying that, look, I understand how the rest of the world operate, but in the four walls of our business, we operate on purpose and core values. And if they don't fit, then we got to let them go. And sometimes when I've gone against that core value, because I'm a human being and I have profitability and I have revenue that I need to look at every month. So I want to say this: we weren't perfect,
Yeah.
and there was rare instances where the sales team would be like, I'd be looking at our sales for the month, and the sales team was like, I have this one or two client that I don't think they're a good fit. What do you think I do? And I'm looking at our little numbers, and I'm like, man, I'm like, all right, accept them.
Yeah, yeah.
And every single time, I'm telling you, every single time, 3 or 4 weeks down the road, my team was like, why the hell did we accept this person? We ended up having to
Mm,
let him go. So in that circumstance, I had to go back to the team and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. I was looking at sales numbers and we should not have taken that client on. So I apologize because I didn't stick to our core values, But there's you I paid the price, I made the mistake, and I owned up to it. And that's what they want leadership to do.
absolutely. And what were your core values? I mean, we talked about it, that purpose and core values are so important. What were your core values for the
For the
marketing
agency,
business? Yeah, the agency.
so
Yeah.
for the marketing agency, I'll list off a couple of things, but I honestly, it's been 2.5 years since I've had it.
Yeah.
I got to go back and take a look at that. But some of them were like, we always treat others with respect. So we always treat team members and clients, and thus clients should always treat us with respect, right? If they didn't um, value that and they didn't treat us with respect, they needed to go. That was a core value. We always look for ways to improve the operations and our services. So we want to deliver the best services, the fastest, and also for the best value as well. You know, so that always had to. So if we were thinking about adding a service on, what if it was going to increase the speed of deliverability or increase the level of service, then we would bring it on. But if it
Yeah.
didn't do that, then we have to look at it like this doesn't fit our core values. Um, always be we always as a team seek to consistently be growing, and we like to attract clients like that as well. um, and we so it was like we always treat each other with respect. We always wanted to we always wanted to add to our operations. So this is something that I told every employee that we ever hired. It was like, we'll give you a wealth of knowledge, but we want you to bring your unique experience and skills so that you can improve upon what we do. Okay. So we may have operations that are a current way of doing things, but you have experience from other industries that you've come into. I want you to bring that experience. I want you to bring your best knowledge and your best information so we can improve. And that's also one of the things that was challenging about digital marketing that you have to understand was that it changes every 6 months. So new platforms are coming up, new software is coming out. Like everything changes every 12 months. Maybe not every 6 months there's a shift, but there's massive changes every 12 months. And so every time that you get your SOP, every time that you get your standards and procedures in place for every role, it changes. Like you got to change it every year, man. It's
Yeah.
like it's a dynamic thing that is never stagnates, ever. So you have to consistently change that. So those were our core values that we kind of kept with.
And were your core values different as you yourself versus the business, or are they synonymous with one another?
They're pretty much the same. Like I always want to treat people with respect. I always want to be focusing on serving them and how I can do better at what I do. I always want to be consistently learning new things so that I can add, a lot of now that I've been doing this long enough in business, a lot of times it's like either going back to old concepts, that I've learned before, but maybe not using right now, or learning new things that I want to implement, execute, and get better at. But I find like anytime that I put any energy into learning something new and different, it always comes back to me.
Mm,
I always make more money or revenue off of that information. It's like there's always a reason. Like right now, like email marketing, email deliverability is probably the most unsexiest thing that you can think about, right? Marketing wise. It's like I'm taking this course because I'm working with a new system right now, and the client is having email deliverabilities issues. It's something that's incredibly unsexy, but I'm learning so many things about it that I didn't know before. And what I've found is that because it's so unsexy, there's a great need in the market for people that are really good at it because so few people want to do it. So when you have these large organizations that have 100,000, 250,000, a million leads and email addresses, and they're trying to get their emails in the inbox folder, there's an art to that, and there's a science behind doing that, and very few people know that. And so me going in there and learning that is like, I always like to go away from what other people do. I like to like kind of figure out like, where is what here's everybody over here, and they're all doing Facebook advertising and lead gen. That's been around for a while. Like I want to go into something like very specialized and very niched and that very few people do, so that I can charge $10,000 a month per client to do this. So that's something like that's something that's new to me. It's something I hated doing when I was with the agency. And honestly, I never had time to do that. I never had time to expand my knowledge of that. And it is really, really technical, and there's a real science behind it. And I will tell you, like 96% of the marketers out there, 97% of the marketers out there that are good don't know about this stuff. So
Mm. And how do you, you start talking about how you're like trying to find that niche or something different that everybody's doing. And oftentimes I feel like that can be met with resistance. How do you know the difference between that 1,000-foot door of the thing that you don't want to do versus the resistance of like, oh, there's something to this?
well, so I definitely know what the 1,000-pound door feels, and I know the universe is telling me like you need to stop doing this. So
Yeah.
stop it. Like that's so. But essentially, I think what you're asking is like, how do I know if this is what I want to do, and then how do I know if that thing is going to be successful, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Is that kind of how you're answering? Like how do like I one is, do I have an affinity for this, and do I enjoy this somewhat, and does this kind of fit into what I'm really good at, right? Am I good at this? Do I feel passionate about it, and do I feel like this is going to be fun and exciting?
Well,
I'm
less
going to
about
learn.
that. I was thinking more of just because you said that you're trying to specialize into the niche, like you're trying to do something
Yeah.
different than everyone else is doing. And so I guess, do you have like a barometer or maybe just a way of being like, okay, this is something that people aren't doing. Like they're not doing, email marketing or whatever. Maybe I should do that versus like, oh, this is
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
not,
So
this is
how do I find
monotonous. I
that?
shouldn't be doing
Yeah.
that.
How do I find that is I talk to people. So I talk to potential clients, or I talk to business owners, and what you'll find when you talk to multiple business owners, you'll like I really do feel like God says like this is a big challenge that they're having. This is always, by the way, when I ran the agency, this is the same thing that when we looked at what new services that we were going to do, we just called our clients and said, what other challenges are you having? And what you'll find is a common theme through a lot of different business owners. And that common theme will usually be the thing that they need, that they really need, right?
Mm,
Or that they want. It's like, hey, multiple people are having the same problem, and it hasn't been addressed by the market because they all have the same issue. For me, like when I take a look at marketing right now, lead gen is not a problem. Lead gen is pretty easy. You can do lead generation on multiple platforms. There's a million different agencies that will help you with lead generation or SEO or website design. But there's only very few people that understand email deliverability or are willing to even do that. So when I talk to different business owners in multiple different industries, and they all come back with the same challenge, which is like, we don't have any problems getting people to opt in for something. Or sometimes we do, but we don't really, it's not a big issue for me to get somebody to opt in for something. We have problems with getting that person who opt in to either initially take action on the offer, or over a period of 6 months, get them to do anything, get them to do something, right? And then we have problems with, now that our list is so big, sending out and get this email into the inbox folder, because that's even more challenging.
mm,
Like just like there's a science behind SEO, there's a science to getting your email into the main inbox folder, not promotions tab and not the spam folder, like in the main inbox, and keeping it there. And when I talk to like 5 or 6 different business owners in 5 or 6 different industries, and they all have the same problem, I know the market has not addressed it. And so I know the biggest test now is now telling them I can help that problem, I can fix that, pay me money for it. And after the
Mm.
first person pays you money for it, it's like, I'm gonna do this. So,
Yeah.
that's how, I mean, that's how that started working with SEO. I never took an SEO course ever in my entire life, and I just got good doing it for myself. The first person was willing to pay me $1,000, and I just then three other people came in and were like, we'll pay you $1,000. And I started charging for digital marketing before I even had a business card or before I had a website. So, and I've done that several times in different things that I've done, is I've, without even having a website set up or a business card set up, I've started generating consulting revenue just
Mm.
from doing what I do.
And how did you, you're doing all this stuff and you're helping a lot of people. How do you keep your mind on task to do the more important things? And because obviously it can, you want to train other people to build a business. You want to make sure they're focused on their core values and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I guess obviously having a good team behind you is really important. But how do you keep your mind on the idea of like looking forward and progressing and
The
doing
okay,
more?
the entrepreneur or business owner has to be able to extract himself from the business at least one day out of every month, every 3 months, and that's so quarterly, I will go do it. I'll go to a hotel. So I usually do this after my business mastermind. And when I was running the agency, I didn't do this as much, but I would do it when I went on my coaching trips. So if I would go to my coach and we get together once a quarter, I would use my time there alone to think differently outside of my business about my business. And so I think the best thing that they can do, this is exactly what I do, is I'll pay for a hotel room. I may drive like an hour away from my house. You can drive 45 minutes away from your house, whatever. It should be outside of your normal area where you live. So mentally, you can get into a creative mindset that's different from what your normal problems are. Extract yourself, even if it's an hour away or 2 hours away. Stay in a nice hotel, get up the next morning, and I don't even answer my cell phone or emails while I'm there. So I just get into like, I'll go to a hotel. There's a Ritz Carlton, that's 2 hours away, that I'll drive to, stay overnight, have a nice dinner, and then the next morning I get up and I either work in my hotel room or I go somewhere else, and I have all these sheets of paper and I plan out what I want to do per quarter.
Mm.
So I say, these are all the opportunities that have come up over the last 90 days. Here's what I'm most excited about. So these three are what I'm really excited about. And then here's an implementation plan for all three of these things. And then I walk away. It's about 4 hours of writing, honestly. And I'll write these out and I'll come away and I'll know exactly what I want to do that quarter. And I'll get at least two of those three things done. And sometimes I get all three done, but at least bare minimum, two have already been started and executed. Because the way that I set it up is I set it up where if I just get the 80% of it done first, it gives me momentum to start getting the whole thing completed. So my thing is like, I leave and say, if I want to start a podcast, or I started a business mastermind last year. So I wrote down my why and my purpose behind doing the business mastermind. It was the first time that we set it up. And I wrote down, here's all the things that have to get done. And here's my top three things that will build momentum for me to get started. So I wrote down a list of everything that I need to do to get started. And I wrote down my three things that I need to start so that I felt like I had enough momentum to continue the project. And those first three can be very easy. It was, I called my five closest and most successful old clients and said, I want to start a business mastermind. Can you help be my advisory board? They're like, yes. Click. Called the hotel where I wanted to do it. Click. Called the hotel. They had availability for the weekend. And I forget what the third thing was, but it was like I had all three of those done by like the next week. And so I had like momentum enough to start working and doing it.
Mm.
And sure enough, that was in August or July. We did our first one in October. We had 17 people at our first business mastermind in Atlantic Beach, Florida. And so far we're on our fourth one that we're doing next month in July. So
That's super exciting.
yeah, it was cool.
And with what you do now, I know for your clients, data is really important now with what you're
Yeah.
doing with optimal growth. And so, um, how important is customer data to improving? I know we talked a little bit about like the email marketing and stuff, but you know, how important is the data to get the information about what they're doing now? versus how they do their business? Or are they kind of synonymous with one? Where like, do you figure out the business first and then the data comes, or is it important to understand the data that's coming in versus how to run your business?
It depends on what industry that you're in. Everybody's going to benefit from having more money, more information. I'm sorry, more information about their customers.
Hmm.
I think the biggest and easiest thing is segmenting that, segmenting your database of clients and customers. Um, that's the first thing. Now, if you're in different industries like financial services, like you need way more data than what I'm going to talk about here. Okay, it's a whole different ballgame. But if you're in the service-based business where it's like chiropractic, PT, or even a marketing agency, you start with like, here's our client list or our patient list of people that have come in and used our services before. Here's maybe our top buyers. Here's our service, our 10% of that list that have spent the most money with us, you know and then here's our lead database of people that have signed up to come in but have never done anything.
Hmm.
Right? And so you have a list of cold leads that have signed up for something and never came in. They came off your website. They're in one component of your database. You have clients that have come in before at some point, in the last 12 months or last, 3 years, if you want to go back 3 years. And then here's our clients that have came in, spend the most money with us, or are currently active clients. So you might break it down into like our cold database, our inactive patient list, and our active patient list.
Perfect.
And you should come up with a monthly, communication or newsletter that's either once a month or twice a month, or once a week if you want to. But it has to be different communication to all three of those.
Mm.
You should segment it by how you, and this is what I'm essentially working on, people. And this goes to email deliverability, by the way, because if you're sending out information that people do not care about, especially with inboxes now,
Mm.
Google, Yahoo, AOL, all these services, they look at people's open rates. And if you're sending out content about low back pain and someone just cares about neck pain and they see your thing for low back pain come up, they're not going
Mm.
to click on it.
Yeah.
The more clicks that you don't get, the more email that Google says. And Google's really good about this. They're like, well, if no one's opening their damn emails, man, this is promotions. Everything coming from this domain now is going to be promotions tab, which means you're going to get less open rates, right? Now you get less open rates, and that even further gets worse because you're sending information about like, hey, I have this low back pain solution, low back pain solutions, low back pain solution. This person has a knee issue. This person has a neck issue. They could care less about low back.
Right.
Never open it. You keep spam. Now you've gone from, I'm sending a newsletter out to somebody who's coming for service, and now because they haven't opened your email in 6 months and you're still emailing them once a week, Google's like, this is spam. And now, even with the best intentions, nothing for your domain is going to open. And now that's where you start seeing email deliverability at like 3%, and that's never going to improve now because that Google has recognized that domain and that email that's going out, and it's like we're never going to let that improve. And so I go in there. So there is a need to fix that. There is businesses in every category that have massive databases that cannot get their emails opened in a main inbox folder.
Mm.
And because of that, they spend all this money on front end marketing. They're spending all this money on the front end to get more leads in, and they can't maximize what they currently have right now. They can't get, they have these massive databases that no one's using correctly, no one's coming in from, or no one's opening their email. If they just focus on this, they can generate almost as much. What I figured it out was, by if they do this correctly, they can pay for all of their marketing and costs can be covered by just what they do on their regular email list. They
Mm.
just maximize revenue from their list. They could pay for all their external marketing coming in every single month. And this is, for some offices, that's like $5,000 to $10,000 a month from the list to pay for the marketing expenses. So
And that's to generate the leads that they may not even open the email.
yeah, exactly.
That's
So
tough. And go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
no, and so you find corporations still have larger corporations still have those same challenges, but they're better at it. Small business owners, brick and mortar business owners, usually are worse at it, and there's a lot more of room for improvement there.
And how has your approach changed during COVID? And because we're seeing this big shift towards online marketing, which is good, it can reach a large audience, but you're gonna definitely have more competition. So how has
Yeah.
your strategy changed with COVID?
It honestly, it has, other than like being, I haven't seen it change from like, from talking about email deliverability. That's always a consistent. So
Mhm.
that's not going to change whether you're in COVID or not
Whoever.
COVID. What I have seen a lot of private practices benefit from is that their core active patients have saved their practices in a way. A lot of physical medicine offices had these real, like these, they survived due to COVID because patients were willing to come in that loved the office. And I saw that in dentistry too. Is like, even with dental offices, um, the patients that trusted and loved the practice were what helped these business owners get through a tremendous year. Because everybody that wasn't really attached to the business and didn't care about it didn't come in. But people that loved the business and loved the practice and loved the doctor, they came in regardless because they wanted treatment and they trusted the facility. So if I, a lot of the offices that had poor service quality and just didn't care, I think struggled more than the ones that had a really good base of people that really love the office. That I call it the core base. That core base of patients that have been in your practice for 5 or 10 years that love the practice, and they're going to show up every month because and spend money with you because they believe in you. Like my chiropractor, when this whole thing went down in COVID, I just gave her $500. I went to the practice and said, "Here's $500, and just bill me when you need, but bill me when I come in for services." Because I was
Hmm.
like, I want to support a small business owner, and I love her office. So I was like, I come in for treatment on a regular basis. I want to support you. Here's $500, and then you just take it from it whenever you need it. And that happened right when things closed down in May last of 2020.
Interesting. It is an interesting approach to care in general. I think we always have to. I think when we first start seeing a patient, we always screen the patient of like, are you going to be able to pay me? And then we provide the value. And I feel like maybe we have that mixed up where we need to inherently trust trust the client first, and then we can verify
Yeah,
kind of later.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I when I'm teaching sales communication strategies, like um, especially for large ticket sales. So some of the training that I do with offices, when I was with the agency, I did a lot of sales training with new clients to help them learn how to sell services, usually cash services. Um, it's I never looked at I trained them like, don't look at insurance stuff. Like, connect with the person first. Like, don't look at what their insurance benefits are. Sit and have a real conversation with them, and then worry about the insurance later. Like, your purpose there when you're a clinician or a case manager or a care coordinator is to connect with a person who's in connect with a human being in front of you, then worry about finances second.
Yeah.
And I feel like most successful doctors that I know that have really large practices all kind of work very similar to that. I call them service first businesses, where they focus on serving the patient first, and then the money comes. And so when I would look at a service or adding something new to the practice, I never thought about, well, how much money is this going to generate? I was like, well, do we need to add this because people need it, right? Like, I can't even tell you. Like, we would when just from my practice, this is my mentality. When I was in practice, we did trigger point massage. So we had a percussor, and we would do trigger point massage. So we would have the patient come in. I have yet found, by the way, I've never found an office that does this. And that's probably why I was burned out in practice. I wanted to make sure that the spine was relaxed before I worked on it. And
Hmm.
then once I relaxed it and treated it, I was going to have them do rehab afterwards. So I had them come in, lay flat on the adjusting table. I would start off with heat therapy to loosen up and warm up the spine. So we did 5 minutes of heat, and then we did 5 minutes of percussive massage. So we would percuss the trigger points in and around the spine to get it to loosen up a little bit. This was 10 minutes of work that no one was paid on.
Hmm.
Like, we just considered it part of our adjustment. So we provided the service because the patient needed it, and I knew it got results. Like, if I would go to an office and they put heat on me first and I get to relax my body, Then they do trigger point massage that further relaxes that specific area. And then I adjust the spine. Then I have them go over and do rehab. Now we would bill out rehab. So we would do, we would have them do spinal care exercises that we would bill out for that service. But the heat and the trigger point massage, we never got paid on, but we did it because we know that it was what the patient needed.
Mm.
So sometimes and I would feel like, I always design it as like, what is going to give them the maximum benefit? Let's do that first, and then let's figure out how we're going to get paid on it second. So if it was some services I would charge for, but I was like, I would always consider the service first. Is this what the patient needs first? Then let's figure out how we can get reimbursed for it, or let's figure out how you can charge the patient for it. But let's where a lot of businesses will say, we're only going to add this therapy or service if we get paid on it. And if we don't get paid on it, we're not going to do it. And I think that's, I know the universe will pay you. You'll get more back if you do things the right way, which is like, give them what they need first, then you'll be benefited and rewarded second. So
How do you value that now with healthcare changing rapidly, especially with technology, now that we're going to be perhaps using Zoom or other modes of communication over telehealth? Perhaps is there a
you
better way to provide value? I know you're out of clinical care for a while now, but at the very least, how are
it
clinicians gonna,
transforms over purpose transforms over Zoom.
yeah,
Like you, I did a Zoom. I'm doing stem cells on my low back, so I did a Zoom call with somebody, with a medical provider, and he was, I didn't choose this office, but that medical provider was 30 minutes late. And when he gets on the phone on the Zoom conference, didn't apologize. I was like, look, I mean, I don't give a shit if you're an orthopedic surgeon or a pain I don't care who you are. If you're 30 minutes late for an appointment with me, you sure as hell better apologize and say I'm
yeah,
sorry.
right.
And so he was late, and we had a good consultation, and I knew he understood what he was saying, but I didn't choose him because one, um, I didn't feel like I felt his purpose and passion to work with me over the phone. I felt like honestly, I felt like a number.
Yeah.
And if I think the biggest thing, if you're in private practice, is any way that you can avoid a patient feeling like they're just a number. And that angers me, by the way, because I know I see a lot of doctors that do well successfully, and they just like they have a machine and just like processes patients, and it's like it's so unpersonal. And I think those guys struggle whenever you have challenges like COVID. um, I don't, I know that you can do a Zoom conference and still you can do a Zoom interview or a Zoom consultation with somebody, do it over digital, and you can still care about that person. I know that you can do it over the phone call and still have a passionate phone call and be invested with that person. It's like treating them like a human being. And those are people that I think will have long-term success.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult, even just the way our system is run, and it's really unfortunate. Is just the common thing for physicians is a 15 to 20-minute interview, and they're running behind, and so like 30
Yeah.
minutes is not like, yeah, the doctor's running late, so deal with it, kind of thing. And you don't have any other options because maybe you don't have insurance, or maybe your
Yeah.
insurance isn't that good, and so you just like, this is the doctor that you found, this is what you're doing, and you're sitting in the clinic for an extra hour or half hour, and then you get to
Yeah.
see the doctor for 15 to 20 minutes. It's almost like, I don't know if the I think the system needs to change in general, but I guess for people who are maybe in that position right now, how do you go against that resistance? How do you go against the grain and like be like, listen, I need to be on time. I need to be purpose driven. I need to have a set of core values that I need to run by, so that way my patients get better.
It's all your ability to confront. You have to have the ability, you have to have the courage to confront those things, those challenges. If you're just
Mm,
going to go with the grain, dude, you're going to be 30 minutes late every single time.
yeah.
You need to, like, if I have a schedule, I need to keep that schedule. And there's sometimes, I'm not perfect. So there's sometimes where I will be running late if I have to, but I always apologize for running late. I'm always considerate of another human being's time, period, hands down. So acknowledge that and say, I apologize for being late. Here's what happened. I was on a phone call with another patient, or I was in another room, and this kind of got held up. I can't go into details, but I got held up and I needed to be there. Is that okay? I'm a human being. You're a human being. You'll understand that, right? But when you don't acknowledge it, you care. It just shows you don't care enough to acknowledge about it. And the other thing is, like, if that's happening every day, you have to confront that. Why is this happening? I need to be more when I'm in a consultation, I need to be considerate of my time. I don't want to go over every single consult. If every single consult I'm going over 15, 20 minutes and I'm slowing the practice down, that is an issue I have to confront.
Yeah.
So if I'm willing to confront it and say, I need to be better at asking the right questions, stopping patients when they're going off tangent, because sometimes patients will go off tangent on stuff that's not relevant. I need to will that in and I need to confront the patient on it. If you have a doctor that's not going to confront a patient when they're going off on stuff that's not relevant, you have someone that's going to run late all the time. And that also goes back to purpose, right? If I care enough about this organization, I care about delivering an amazing service, but I sure as hell also care about being a leader to my team. That means that I have to do things that I'm not comfortable with. I mean, sometimes I got to stop a patient mid-sentence and be like, look, thank you for sharing that. Let's go ahead and keep it to what we're talking about here, right here. Okay.
Right.
That sometimes I have to confront a staff member and be like, look, this is a problem. You're running late on your consults. I have to be willing to have those difficult consultations and to confront what most people don't want. You want to talk about success? The other component of success is confronting what most people won't do.
Mm.
Just have difficult conversations, fire team members that are not a good fit for your team, and focus on delivering the best quality service.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I think people definitely avoid that. And it's almost like this passive aggressive thing where, you know, especially with like the front office where you have this like role. And I've worked in clinics when I was, well, even when I was a student or even as like practicing as a provider, there's like this bitterness between like the provider and the front office. It's like, well, he's running late again. And then there's just like this bitter, like this, it's a recipe for disaster is what it
It's
is.
a disaster, man. So you have to confront those things, and when it's you have to be willing to take responsibility for it and stop doing it. You know,
Mm,
um, like I told with the agency, like sometimes if I made a mistake of accepting somebody that we shouldn't do, I paid the price. I said I was sorry for it, but I made sure that I didn't do that again. Or I was like, it would go a very long time without doing that again because I remember it doesn't feel good to tell people you made a mistake, especially people that look up to you. It doesn't feel good. And so when you do it and you accept responsibility for it, you remember what that feels like. So the next time the salesperson comes and says, hey, I know our numbers are down, but I have somebody that's probably not a good fit that we can hit our numbers with, you'll say, don't bring them on. It's not worth
mm.
it. It's not worth it because one, I know the price that we're going to pay, but two, I'm going to have to go apologize to my team and say I'm sorry, and I don't want to do that as a leader. I don't want to do that. So I'm willing in that uncomfortable situation to accept responsibility and confront it.
It's certainly the hard. I think it's definitely got to be the hardest part of being a leader, being a CEO or anything for
Yeah.
that matter, is just being able to have that realization and also talk about that and being able to say no. Like this is what I need to do. This is what I believe, and this is what needs to happen. Because otherwise, the ship is going to be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And do you miss clinical care at all?
Every once in a while, I do. Yeah,
Yeah,
every once in a while, I do. I do it sometimes when I'm in the practice, and I'm like, man, it would be great to have an office that I can just do all the stuff I want.
yeah.
That's I miss that.
And we talked about so much about purpose and core values, but in order for you to, at least for me, I always had to maintain an exercise program for me to stay
Yeah.
healthy and keep my mind right. Because if the operations underneath the hood aren't going well, your output isn't going to be good. So how do you keep yourself fit and how do you keep your mind right so that way you can operate at a high level?
I definitely so that was one thing that I noticed when I worked in the agency. I started having stress issues and health issues, digestive problems. So I started eating healthier after I sold the agency and started working out. Like I hadn't gone to the gym consistently in like 6 years. And I'm not even kidding you. In 2019, as soon as I sold that March 1st, I sold the business. By like the mid-April, I had gone to the gym like 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And I started going back because I had more time now. I wasn't as stressed. And now I know because I'm dealing with some low back issues and I'm actually getting stem cell treatment on it next week. Um, I do realize how important your physical health is to what you do. You can't, I mean, I don't do anything physically for a living, but if I'm not operating at my peak level where I'm eating, like for me, operating at my peak level means that like I have all the energy that I need every day. I'm eating healthy. I like to eat grain free when so I've realized this over the last 7 months. I did 4 months of grain free. I'm not currently grain free right now, but I did 4 months of like no lectins, no grains, no rice, no bread. And I ate super clean and I felt the best that I did. And it's summertime, so we've had guests in town and I've kind of veered off a little bit. But I talked to my wife and like we're going back on. So for me, it's like removing all the sugar, bread, all the grains that cause inflammation in your system and in your gut. Making sure that I'm active, like at least 4 or 5 times a week, where I'm going, even if it's for a half an hour, just doing something. So I'll either go swimming or I'll just get on the treadmill or go to the gym and do. I don't do aggressive workouts. I want activity and I just want to get movement going, just so I can stay consistent, but I don't want to injure myself more. So
Mm.
that's kind of where it's at right now.
Kind of like full circle too, is like keeping that inflammation down. I mean, that's where we started this conversation, and
Yeah, yeah,
just keep sugar and other things have been more likely to try and create systemic inflammation. And I
yeah.
think keeping that down, or at least from a nutritional level and an exercise level, is super important.
When you're 48, well, I now it's just like it has to be that way because as the older I'm getting, it's like there's more consequences if you eat unhealthy. Just physically what you feel like if I don't eat bread as much, but if I go on like a tangent and I'll have bread, or pizza, because pizza's like I eat cauliflower crust pizza now, but like sometimes I'll have like a regular pizza, like not that we eat a lot of pizza, but like when like the girls buy
You're
it,
sneaking
and
in pizzas all
I'll
the
sneak
time,
it,
aren't
yeah,
you?
exactly. But I'll pay the price for it. You literally will get gassy and bloated, and it's just like you just can't get away with the same things in your 20s and 30s. You can't do the same thing in your 50s, 40s or 50s. So
Yeah, it definitely going to be tough. And one thing that remember that we talked about before was sleep is really important to you. And
yeah.
I think we can get really stuck in this mentality of we can sleep when we're dead. And I think there's definitely there's times when we don't need to sleep maybe as much, just so we can get over a hurdle, or maybe there's like something that you're really, really like head fast on trying to get it done. But for you, how important has sleep been over your
It's
journey with
massive. It's massive now. So I've been doing some work on my airway. So I wear a device to expand my airway, to avoid sleep apnea, because I was having issues where I was waking up frequently, and I would say I would have more mild sleep apnea, but I just wasn't getting restful sleep. So I feel it's even more important. It's funny. It's like I'm also now working on airway and breathing exercises, to make sure that I'm breathing more through my nose. I mean, I'm talking right now, so I'm breathing through my mouth, but like breathing more through my nose, breathing through my nose at night. I'm actually starting with, I don't know if you've ever heard of mouth taping, where you tape your mouth so you breathe through your nose all night.
Mm.
Um, it's better because it stimulates nitric oxide, which is important for regeneration and health. And so if you're mouth breathing all night, you're not getting the full restful sleep that you could be getting. And so I've been doing more work with that, and it's been helping. So
That's fantastic. Well, it
yeah,
looks like you're on top of it. And I think at the very least, I've seen many people who transition from a less busy role to a more busy role, and their health kind of goes out the window. So, I mean, kudos to you to keep
thank
staying
you,
on track.
thank you,
Well,
thank you.
listen, it's been great talking to you. I think we're winding down to the end here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to close out with a couple final questions, if that's all
Yeah,
right
yeah,
with you.
sure.
Cool. So this is the Health Me to Health You section of the podcast. And our
Mhm.
first question that I want to ask you, and gave you a little time beforehand to kind of ask and think about it. And the first question is, if you had the attention of everyone in the world for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Um, focus on what you eat. Um, focus on what you eat. Focus on how you sleep at night, and then focus on the loving relationships that you have both in your family and honestly in your professional career. The relationships are your biggest currency that you have in life, hands down, and that's coming after selling two businesses.
Yeah.
The relationships that I've built up over a period of a lifetime are what will continue to be build more currency and more wealth in my life than anything that I could have done or sold.
Love it. Love it. For someone in healthcare right now who may be looking to pivot outside of healthcare, what small bit of advice would you give? I know you gave a lot of great information today, but maybe just a small, compact uh, bit of information.
It goes back to this old saying, like, do what you're passionate about. So if you have a passion for something outside the industry, I when I was younger, I never believed that, well, just do what you're passionate about and God will find a way to make you earn a living from it. And now I'm older and 48, I would say that's true. Like, just look for what you're passionate about and then figure out a way to make revenue from it. And you'll see in most cases they will line up. They will line up.
I like it. And how do more people know about you, and where can they go to learn more about optimal growth?
Yeah, they can go to optimalgrowthcoaching.com. That's my website address. They can go to our Facebook page and take a look at there. We usually post regularly on the Facebook page and with webinars that we're doing and uploading.
Listen, James, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing so much information today. It's been great.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate talking to you
Cool.
as well.